So this year I tested a ton of different products, and while I did put out like 50 videos, most of the products I tried were not good enough for me to even bother reviewing them. So in today's video, I'm going to tell you why sometimes I don't bother to review certain products, and we're going to go through a list of the products that ultimately I chose not to review in 2024. So here's the reason that I don't review absolutely everything. The first reason is most tennis products aren't actually that interesting to me, especially when it comes to strings. There's like a million of them, and while I do actually really like reviewing strings, so many of those ones that come across my desk are just lazy rebrands. They're not offering anything special, or they're like really old formulas that just don't stand out when compared to the offerings of the last, say, 5 years. And the second reason is I'm just not the right demographic. Like, let's say for multi-filament nylons, for example. I'm a polyester player, I'm a polyester guy. It doesn't make any sense for me to start reviewing nylons, especially when I've only really tried, let's say, like 5 or less nylons in my life. Like, I don't really think I'm going to be able to say anything that's very interesting about that product. Same goes for game improvement rackets or lighter rackets that are designed for more intermediate or beginner players or senior players who are kind of past their physical peak. It's not that they're bad rackets, it's that they're not designed for a player like me. They're someone who's got slightly less developed technique, who's a little bit less mobile, and I don't think that I'm going to really be able to evaluate what that racket is designed for when I don't play the way that racket is designed to be played. So the third reason is sometimes I'll have a negative experience with the company, not because of their product, but because of like their customer service side. Now, I assume that in general, I'm probably getting better customer service than the average customer. They want me to review their product positively so they can sell more, so it makes sense that I'd be treated a little bit better. So when things do go wrong, that kind of signals to me that things could be a little bit worse if you are actually a paying customer, which is a little bit concerning. And then beyond that, if I see like a history of bad customer service, then I'll probably ignore the product. I don't really want to cover products that are going to lead to business for people who are doing business in a way that's either like ripping off the customer, blaming the customer for mistakes, that kind of thing. And the fourth reason is that sometimes it's really hard to be sure if a product is genuinely bad. How do we know that these last 3 reasons aren't the actual reason that I don't enjoy the product? Products generally have a right consumer for them. That's why there's so many. They can find their niche with a certain consumer. So maybe the reason that I don't like the product is because I'm the wrong demographic. Maybe the reason I don't like the product is because I had bad experience with the company. Maybe the reason I don't like the product is because it's not interesting to me personally because of all the new strings that I've tried, but it might be interesting to someone else because they have a different kind of product history to me. So if something is not very good or I'm not enjoying it very much, I often won't review it simply because I'm not 100% sure I'm being 100% fair with my review. And then the fifth bonus reason is obviously I have a limited time. I do about 1 video per week. Sometimes I do a little bit more, sometimes I do a little bit less. And the reason is I really want to spend a lot of time testing this product, taking it to its breaking point, taking it against other players, trying different setups with the different rackets like weight or strings, trying the string in different rackets, stuff like that. And I don't have unlimited time. I gotta stick to a sort of a schedule and get these videos out for you guys in a reasonable amount of time. And those videos and that testing needs to be rigorous enough and up to my standard so that I feel good about what I've said about a certain product. So because of that, I also just don't have time to be as diligent with all these products. So if I try it once and it doesn't fill me with enough curiosity to try different setups and really tinker with that product, then it's kind of a signal to me that this isn't really worth reviewing for you, because you're not going to be able to take it through its paces when you're not enjoying playing with it. So here's the list of products that I chose not to review this year. We'll start off with YTEX. This was a shipment I got at the beginning of the year a huge amount of YTEX strings, including cult classics like Quadro Twist and Square X Sharp, as well as more normal offerings like Hexagon X and Pro Tour Blue. We did briefly and sarcastically cover Square X Sharp, as I do think it's a unique offering in the marketplace. It's so sharp, you don't often see that, but the rest of the lineup was pretty uninteresting to me. While I am a big fan of the customer service provided by the owner Ivor, I struggled to really find a reason to suggest these strings. So generally, YTEX's mission is to provide spin-friendly strings that are also comfortable. This means they're quite soft, and the texture of the string is more like gummy soft, so they lock up really quickly, a lot more quickly than I'd expect from strings in 2024. Further, they're really extreme with the shapes they offer, like going for twisted or super sharp strings, which creates a pretty inconsistent and overall launchy experience at high swing speeds. So ultimately, I feel like I would just rather recommend a Tourmaline string for most players, because their strings are at least as comfortable as YTEX, at least as spin friendly, and most importantly, they play better for longer because that spin comes from snapback, not the texture. So the next batch of strings that I tried was from Kirschbaum, including more cult classics like Max Power and Proline 2. I also tried their Flash and Proline Evo strings, and again, none of these strings really stood out to me in any way. Max Power is extremely firm, though I really didn't find it offered better control or tension maintenance or even feel than my favorite control string, which is Grapple Snake Tour Sniper. Proline 2 seems to be coated, and I found that I wore that coating off almost immediately, so the strings locked up pretty fast. I lost all the spin and all the control that was present for the first 30 minutes. Flash and Evo were probably the two better offerings from everything that I tried. I also tried Black Shark and Pro Tour Control, which is like shaped. But those two, Flash and Evo, didn't really stand out in any way either. The spin is mediocre at best for round strings between those two, and the feel was just nothing special. I'd way rather use like Hyper G Round or Polytour Pro compared to those two. I personally think that the only string in the Kirschbaum lineup that's worth going for and offers any competitive value in the marketplace is the Orange Smash string that Intuitive Tennis uses. It's dirt cheap, which is great, like $70 a reel or less, and it plays completely fine. Like the rest of their strings were like no better than completely fine. So the fact that their cheapest string is also completely fine, it's like, why don't you just go with their cheapest one? Next up is Babolat XALT or XALT, I don't know, XALT. It's a multi-filament that Babolat sent me for testing. And the thing is, I think it's the wrong demographic for me. I'm a polyester user. No multi-filament that's going to come out is going to play as well for me as poly. I'd even rather use Kirschbaum or YTEX compared to any multi-filament. Because I just don't really like them for my game, I don't think that my feedback on the string is going to say that much about the string, especially to the correct demographic for that string. Like, I don't have comfort issues with poly, so me trying a comfortable multi-filament, like, my feedback means nothing. Basically, if I'm using XALT and the whole time I'm testing it, I'm just thinking to myself, I'd way rather be using a poly right now. I just don't think that's an appropriate way to analyze a product, so I don't do it. Rackets. So here's a quick list of rackets I tried this year that I did not bother reviewing, as well as a rapid fire discussion on why. Number 1 is the Artengo TR960 Control Tour 1820. This is the Monfils racket, and it's pretty gutless in stock form. The upper hoop gives you absolutely nothing, like there's not enough weight up there. It's too light for the lack of power that you get from the beam and how dense the string pattern is. I personally would way rather just use like an older Prestige or an Ultra Pro if I'm going to live without any power. I think those rackets feel a little bit more buttery, they feel better, they play nicer to me. Next up is the Tecnifibre TFx1 300. That's the 100 square inch option that Tecnifibre makes. It's an insanely powerful frame. It kind of has bad feel. It also kind of has a very launchy string bed, and the swing weight is huge. It's 340, so it's really hard to generate any kind of spin that you need to control that amount of power. I don't really understand what the demographic for this frame is, so I couldn't feel like I could recommend it to anybody. So then it kind of becomes really hard to review. Like, I personally would way rather use or recommend a Pure Drive or an E-Zone 100. Next up is the Extreme and Boom Pro and generally most Auxetic 2.0 updates. For those 2 frames, I did make first impressions videos for the members, but generally to make like a full-on video for the main channel, I think heads updates are just a little bit too incremental for me to really tell an interesting story. Are the Extreme or Boom Pros bad frames? No, absolutely not. They're perfectly good. They're very serviceable. I could use them in a match. But they're kind of boring to me, and I don't know what story I'm even really going to tell because they're so similar to their previous versions. Next up is the Babolat PureStrike 16x20, so that's the 100 square inch version. I finally got the chance to hit this one when I was at Tennis Warehouse because they don't offer that racket in Canada, and that is one of the worst rackets I've tried. I would way rather use any other racket I've talked about so far than that one. There's 0 hitting weight above the Babolat stripes, so like in the hoop, not even the upper hoop, even in the mid hoop, it feels like there's no hitting weight. So you get 0 power and 0 stability. The whole review would just be me complaining about the lack of weight and how dumb it is to have a more control-oriented string bed in a frame that's inherently less powerful because of the wacky weight distribution. That's one of the worst rackets I've ever tried. It feels also really bad because there's no weight. I don't know what they were thinking. Next and last up for rackets is the Prestige Pro. It's going to have a limited audience because it's so control-oriented. It's kind of designed for more retro, yet still advanced players. A lot of those players are also aging, so they're moving to control-oriented rackets. So the kind of audience for a Prestige Pro type of racket is really dwindling. I think the story would also be kind of predictable. It's a control-oriented frame that feels good but doesn't have a lot of power. I didn't really feel like making a video telling that story again. It's something that we've been there, we've done that. If you know that's what you're looking for, you already know. You don't need me to tell you that's something that you should try. All right, so next up is shoes. And as a general rule, I don't review shoes for 2 main reasons. One, my friend Foot Dr. Zach is just way too good. I don't see how I'm possibly gonna provide any value that he doesn't in his reviews. I watch his reviews when I need to make a decision. There's no way I'm gonna be as rigorous with my testing. And so he's just killed my motivation to make any shoe videos, and I'm perfectly fine with that, to be honest. The other reason I don't really like reviewing shoes is it's kind of risky. Let's say you go to the store, you try on a shoe, it feels pretty good, and then you play in it, and if it doesn't play right for you, do you keep reviewing it and then give a negative review on the shoe when really it was probably just a fit issue or just wrong for your foot? Do you play through the fit issue being bad and risk maybe an injury? Like, these Artengo shoes that I tried, they're like the higher end one. I think Monfils is wearing them. They're horrible. I could not play for more than a week with them because instantly I get huge knee and back pain. Not enough cushioning, didn't feel super secure in them. They're horrible. So do I go, oh yeah, I'm gonna stick with this shoe for the next couple months to get a durability test even though it's killing my body? Or do I just do a half-baked 1-day review on them? I just didn't feel like it's right on average, and I don't also want to do 1 shoe review a year because I can only find 1 good shoe for me every year. That just is not going to get a ton of traction either, so yeah, it's just really not worth it for me. And then if you're wondering, maybe these shoes, it wasn't their fault, it's just you. I switched to the CT Rally the next week and all my pain goes away. I don't think there's anything to be said that those shoes have any redeeming quality. Even the price isn't great. Like, they don't really go on sale. You could probably wait and find a good shoe on sale for about the same price as those Artengos. Okay, so here's some drama part. These are the companies that I avoided reviewing their product due to the people behind them. And so the first one is Natural Gut Wholesale. Now, my personal experience with Natural Gut Wholesale was completely fine. They were responsive and generous with all the products they sent, so no big deal, right? Well, this is kind of an example of a product that is you get what you pay for. Extremely cheap gut that phrase really easily, and for us, it would always break within the first hit of trying it, like 30 minutes. You're lucky if you get anything longer than that. And that's not great. It feels really wasteful to use strings that way. But even worse than that are the horror stories that I've heard from viewers who will get like cussed out by the owner, completely mistreated, saying stuff like, you get what you pay for, what did you expect? And like, those are just not stories you want to hear. That you don't want to be making videos on a product that might direct sales to a company that is being run by people who seemingly have negative intentions. Number 2 is Miami strings. The blue one, which is Tour Hex, was actually pretty good. Unfortunately, they have had some pricing consistency issues, especially towards the beginning of the year, which were not handled very well. And I do understand that that's a war-torn country that Miami is based out of, and I can't imagine how difficult it must be to be trying to run a business in a country that's actively at war. But I keep on hearing things about like slow fulfillment times, not fulfilling orders, no customer service or very unresponsive customer service, and all this stuff has been documented on Attendance Warehouse thread as well. And reading all these stories kind of turned me off actually reviewing the product. There were some other things that occurred in my dealings with them that also made me seriously doubt if I wanted to send them any traffic. So I ended up not reviewing those. And then just to flex on how good of a reviewer I am, I'm also going to tell you some bad stuff and strings that I chose not to review from my own affiliate partners. So just because you're an affiliate of TennCom doesn't mean you're safe from not getting reviewed. Tortline, I love how many strings they put out. It feels like they're always taking risks. They're going for it. Now I do love Otoro, but up until Otoro, I actually hadn't made any dedicated reviews on any Tortline strings. I do like Wasabi quite a bit, and I do like Caviar quite a bit, but their other offerings, they don't really do it for me. They're kind of mushy. They're not really intriguing. I think they're too soft for what I'm looking for, like Snapper, Enzo Pro. Toro works in some rackets for me, but sometimes it's just I feel out of control when I use it. Now, I do think there is an audience for those strings. I think powerful soft polys that have pretty decent durability considering how soft and thin they are, those are important to have, but for me, they just don't work. Then the same goes for a string like True Pro Black Knight, which I also didn't really love. While I do love Ghostwire, I do really like Duraflex, and of course, Pure Rush. They're great. Not everything that True Pro does is great. So my final thoughts on not reviewing everything and then making a giant super review of all the stuff that I didn't review is that even this kind of video, I don't know if I love making it. I don't really feel good about only saying bad stuff about all these products because I feel like you're taking away from the experience of the people who actually do use those products and they get good use out of them. They enjoy them. Say you're enjoying Black Knight because there's a huge cult following for True Pro Black Knight. Doesn't work for me. I don't like it. I think it feels mushy. Maybe you love it. So what? Who cares what I think about the string that you already have a formed opinion on? Doesn't mean either of us are objectively wrong. We just have different preferences. On the bright side, I do think on average products do seem to be getting better. Maybe less so in rackets because I basically use my Pure Air RAF as basically a racket from 2004. So it's like not that interesting, but it works really well for me on average. There's less bad rackets. I think like I had a list of 5 or 6 bad rackets that are on sale now that I've personally tried to make work for me but didn't, and I feel like they're like objectively bad in the way that I don't really see a right user base for them. But 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, it felt like every single company had like 3 bad rackets that were just like, ugh, you didn't want to use that. String tech, I think, is evolving more objectively, positively. Like, I really feel like there's a huge difference between polyesters that are out today versus polyesters that were out 10 years ago versus 20 years ago versus the AluPower that came out in the 90s. Like, going back and trying those YTEX and Kirschbaum strings that were kind of developed in the 2000s or the 2010s, you can really feel that the post-2020 development on strings, they've just taken everything up a notch. The strings last longer, they're more slippery so they don't get locked up. You get actually like 5 solid hours of playability out of most of these strings now. And if you don't get full 5 hours of playability, at least they're offering something pretty interesting. Like Grapplesnake Tour Mako is softer and that kind of semi-rough sandpapery texture does mean the durability isn't as good as most newer polys, but at least they're really doing something with that string and you can feel them trying to push the boundaries. And the same is true with other strings like RPM power, which is a crazy weird string. And then we're also seeing interesting developments with like these sort of like hybridized strings, like Tecnifibre TFx I think was a nice step forward. Link's Touch is a really interesting string as well that I find myself personally recommending a lot in the consultations. Maybe that's one I should do a more dedicated review on. So those are all the products that I didn't review this year. If you want to support the channel to help me call out bad products more frequently, the affiliate links are a great way to support us. We also have like PayPal donations if you don't really want to keep buying stuff, but you want to show your thanks. But you really don't have to do that. Just you watching the video means so much to me. I know it means a lot to Simon.